Hi, everyone. My name is John Bristowe. I am the community director for Octopus Deploy, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar series entitled Octopus 101. This is the November 2024 edition. We do this webinar every month to give folks like you a exposure to Octopus, everything that it does, how it works, why you might use it, etc. And so, welcome, and thank you for taking the time to join us here today. If you have any questions at all, feel free to post them to the comments. This is a live webinar. Let us know where you're joining from today. We are live streaming this to all our social media channels as well, and we'd love to hear where you're from. And if you have any questions at all during the webinar, I will answer them live. So feel free to take advantage of that. We've got the comment section here. We've already gone ahead and posted the fact that I'm joining from the Gold Coast, Australia. So welcome to everyone who's joining us here today. I'll just give it a second here or two while folks are joining. So to set the stage for this webinar, just like to share with you some resources here. So first and foremost, we've got our website itself. So if you go to octopus.com, you'll see a site that looks like this. I'm hoping that you've been there before. So this is our webpage, and you can find out everything that you want to know about Octopus itself. It's a great resource. We've got this thing updated all the time. We've got docs, we've got great graphics, we've got everything that you'd want to know about Octopus itself. And you can also, most importantly, download a free trial. So you can start a free trial here and either download and install it yourself, the Octopus product, or you can actually set yourself up with a cloud instance. So the solution that we'll be looking at here, which is Octopus Deploy, Octopus itself is a product that is also hosted on the cloud. So there you go. Awesome. So in the meantime, if you have any questions, just let us know. All right, so looks like the crowd has warmed up. We've got some comments here, which is awesome. Hello, Ian, joining from Spokane, Washington. I've actually been there. Thanks for joining us here today, Ian. Really great to see you there. Awesome. And again, if you have any questions, feel free. We're more than happy to answer them live as we go along. So to get started, what I'd like to do is just set the stage of what we're talking about here. So jumping over to my slides, we want to talk a little bit about what Octopus is, and probably most importantly, how and why it works. I think when you look at technology, it's really important to understand the why. Why would you use a solution like Octopus? So just to reiterate, my name's John. In case you haven't met me before, you can reach me at this email address. If you have any questions at all after this webinar, feel free to take advantage of it. Happy to answer your questions here or afterwards as we're talking about this stuff. All right, so things that you're going to learn in this webinar. As I said before, you're going to learn how Octopus works and also why you should use it. We're going to talk a lot about fundamentals, things like projects, terms like projects, deployment processes, releases. These and other terms you're going to learn throughout the course of the next 30 minutes or so. And we use those terms to describe the things that we're doing inside of our product. So if you take an example, like a deployment process is the series of steps to do a deployment. And so these and other terms, hopefully through demos and such, you'll become familiar with. We're also going to show you how to create a deployment process itself. So we're going to take a vanilla sort of environment from scratch and take that all through the process of showing you how to create a project. We'll show you how to create a deployment process, and we'll show you how it works in the context of Octopus itself. And then finally, we're going to show you how you can actually bridge the gap between Octopus itself and any other solutions you may have in your pipeline. So a pipeline doesn't often live by itself. Octopus is not an island. It doesn't live onto itself. It actually has to be used in concert with other tools because that's what we're trying to do here as part of a CI CD process. And so we'll show you how to integrate a deployment with a CI process server, like GitHub Actions. There are many solutions out there. We use GitHub Actions ourselves, and I'm a fan of it. But if you use GitLab, if you use TeamCity, if you use any other sort of BuildKite, etc., these and other solutions you can totally use, and we integrate with all of them, which is awesome. All right, so understanding the why. This is a graphic I've been using for a while to kind of lay out the land of how things kind of hang together when it comes to Octopus itself. And if you stick with this just for a second, you'll understand where I'm going. So typically, as a developer, when you're developing software and you're getting it into the hands of users, life is pretty good. Our app's on the left, our users on the right. We're somewhere in the middle. We may not have built the app, but maybe we're in charge of getting it into the hands of customers. And so this is a typical scenario where the basic deployments are easy, right? You're shipping out a product. And the users themselves are maybe 2 cubicles away or 10 cubicles away. They're not too far away. And you've got a very simple automation or deployment script for pushing out updates to users. Your production environment's easy to understand. Your users are pretty uniform. There's not a lot of variance there in terms of the types of users you have. So life is good. But as we all know, just like software, solutions like this can get complicated. And so in scenarios like this, where you start to have different types of users, different types of apps, different versions of those apps, different environments to host those apps, like Kubernetes or on the metal, like your own server farm, etc. This can get really, really tricky. Complex deployments can be really hard over the alternative, which are simple deployments. And so this is not even the full picture yet. So it can get really gnarly, especially when you consider the fact that you've got scalability and growth issues associated with this. So as you scale and grow, things can get really, really tricky from a deployments perspective. And as we can see, our head just explodes as the DevOps engineer trying to manage all this stuff. Our deployment scripts are brittle. It's really hard to track changes. Rollbacks are non-existent in some cases. Environments are just heavy to work with. There's no concept of tenants. We don't have good deployment patterns. Customers are screaming at us for app updates, and we're not really comfortable with the idea of deploying on Friday. These and other concerns we can alleviate with a solution. And that solution we like to propose is Octopus. So the idea is that Octopus Deploy makes your complex deployments easy. And so the idea here is that by utilizing Octopus Deploy, you can do so in concert with your environments and use them well. And so we have this concept called tenants. Tenants are an idea that you can have different types of customers in different locations or different geos or different types of segments. And those customers can get different versions of your apps. We also have different types of environments where you can utilize them and have different types of environment types. So you can have development, staging, production, etc., and have those targeting a variety of different environment machines, etc. So Octopus Deploy is your sort of universal source of truth when it comes to deployments, and it can integrate with any sort of CI process that you have and make your life really, really a lot more pleasant from that perspective. So when you think about Octopus Deploy, I mentioned earlier that Octopus Deploy is in this context of a best of breed pipeline. So you have a variety of solutions out there. These are some solutions that we use. They're not all. We use a lot of different solutions, but these are some of the canonical ones you'll see in the world today. So on the left, you'll have issue tracking and builds and planning and stuff. On the right, you'll have your hosts, and somewhere in the middle, you'll have a CI process and a workflow that navigates all this stuff. Somewhere in the middle, though, for a long time, this notion of deployments has been a tricky one. You'll see a lot of solutions like GitHub Actions and others kind of bolt on the concept of delivery or deployment after the fact. They have a nebulous term around environments. Environments are kind of tricky from that perspective. Any types of deployment patterns you have to roll yourself. Forget about doing deployments to classic or traditional targets like SQL Server or IIS, etc., or VM deployments, etc. These and other sort of scenarios are really tricky. And so the idea is that with Octopus Deploy, we really feel like this is a solution that fits well and is going to be solved by Octopus. And so bring the technology or use what makes you happy in this context. And that's not independent of any other solution itself. So you can utilize things like Jenkins, TeamCity. I mentioned BuildKite. There are many, many other CI solutions out there. As well, there are many other targets that you can obviously want to deploy to. So AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. These are just three of the most popular cloud providers. But there are other traditional targets as well, on-prem infrastructure, for example. These and other sort of scenarios you can certainly support in the context of Octopus. In addition to that, we also integrate with technologies like Terraform, ServiceNow, etc. So if you're doing any provisioning or you're wanting to integrate with Kubernetes or you're wanting to do any sort of ITSM integration, ServiceNow, Jira, etc., these and other types of integration points we certainly support. Looking at a context here with GitHub, for example, the idea is that GitHub and Octopus work really, really well together. In fact, we were at GitHub Universe just last week in San Francisco, and this was one of the slides that I stole from our sales team because I really think it exemplifies kind of the integration point. So in the middle here, we have Octopus Deploy. It sets up your environments, sets up your projects. We'll talk a little bit about this. Obviously, you haven't seen this yet, but I'll show you this in a second. There's lots and lots of building blocks and parts and pieces to it. So you can actually have this all contained. Your CI can integrate with this, and your CD platform, which is Octopus Deploy, can have this all contained. And surrounding that, you have a variety of scenarios. So you can do integration via GitHub Copilot. So we now have an extension. We were actually mentioned as part of the GitHub Copilot extension launch. You can also use that in concert with GitHub itself. So we have both a GitHub app as well as a collection of actions that you can use to integrate GitHub and Octopus together. And so whatever way you want to slice it, you actually have really good integration points between these two environments. And that's not independent of other things as well. So if you have, say, for example, container registry or artifact repositories in the form of Docker, JFrog, whatever, we integrate with that. There's a concept called feeds that you can use inside of Octopus that allows you to do just that thing. And of course, when doing deployments, we support pretty much everything. So if you're deploying to the cloud, or you're deploying on-prem, or to, anything that is sort of unique or possibly challenging, like Kubernetes, this is something that we certainly support, and you can definitely use in that scenario. All right, let's go ahead and jump into a demo. Always fun. All right, so I will now, the magic of software, jump over to my environment here. Let me go ahead and bring this up full screen so you can see this. So over here, this is Octopus Deploy. So this is the dashboard for Octopus itself. So when you navigate to your instance, you'll see a page that looks like this. And this page, on the left-hand side, you'll see we have this sort of this menu structure that outlines a whole bunch of things like deployments, processes, triggers, operations, etc. And then in the middle here, you have this sort of at-a-glance dashboard. This is where you manage your deployments. So here we can see our releases. We have a project here called Octopus Deploy. This is part of a group called Octopus Deploy, the default project group. And then we have here our environments. And you can see here, we can easily get a quick glance here at, what is happening across our environments and across our releases itself. And so the dashboard turns out to be immensely powerful and useful for a lot of customers. Looking at it another way, here's a more elaborate example where, you have a lot of projects. So we have these projects listed here. We have a variety of environments. So in this case, we have 5 environments instead of 3, and we have different versions of projects shipped to different environments. All right, so jumping back to this environment here, let's start off by creating a new space. Now, just to set the context here, a space is essentially a isolation boundary. It allows you to have a way of sorting your projects into self-contained units. I'm going to create a new space here. I'm going to give it a name called Octopus 101. And then I'm going to make myself a manager here and click save. The reason why I'm doing this is because I want to start from scratch. I'm going to show you what this looks like when everything's blank. This is like hello world. So we give you this nice sort of tailored environment to show you how to get started. So you can click on the get started page, and then we walk you through a series of steps of how to set this up. So I'll call this hello Octopus, for example. In here, I can specify a bunch of settings related to my project. So a project is really the lifeblood of how you integrate how you conceptualize your applications shipping to, shipping to folks. So in here, we can specify where our project process is living, or our settings, for example. So I can store it internally inside of Octopus, or I can actually use a Git repository. So we actually have a feature called config as code. And what that means is we can actually write all the settings, all the configuration associated with projects to that Git repository. I can do branching, I can do commits. And the reason why that's nice is because you can think of it as just like yet another text file that I can update. So rather than having to go through Octopus itself, I can actually use GitOps, and I can manage my Octopus projects through a text file that I can update through a Git repository. I'm not going to go ahead and do that for now. I'm just going to show you how to do this through the sort of bare bones setup. So I'm going to specify Octopus here. And then we have these sort of pre-canned environments that you can deploy to, that you can use if you want. I can also specify some other advanced settings. I'm not going to set all that. I'm just going to go ahead and create the project. So the first thing you need to do for any project is you need to specify at least one environment. So an environment is it's semantically meaningful to you, but really is not a physical environment. It's a virtual concept that allows you to deploy to various machines. Whether those machines are hosted in the cloud or otherwise. So I'll specify these three here. I can add other ones as well if I wanted. Let's go ahead and create those environments. And then we're kicked over into this view, which is our deployment process view. This is where we start to create our deployment processes. So here you'll notice in this view, I have a number of categories on my left-hand side here. So these are categories that describe, I want to do deployments to Kubernetes or to Docker or to Terraform. And then in the middle here, we have what are called steps. And these steps are basically the building blocks of the deployment process that I'm using here. So a deployment process is a collection of steps, and those steps are used to basically define a deployment process, and those steps are run to do a deployment. Because deployments themselves are not just one action. They typically are multiple actions, either held in parallel or in serial execution. They can incorporate a variety of rules. So, for example, I only want certain actions to run in these cases or those conditions. So building these things up, there's a lot of twists and turns that can get involved. So let's go back in here and let's take a look at some examples. So the most popular step we have is the run a script step. I'm smiling because this is basically like, let me take the wheel and drive. So I can add this step to my existing deployment process. Now, when I do that, you'll notice we have this step here. So this is the first step, run a script. And in the middle here, we have all these bells and whistles, twists and turns and knobs and buttons that we can push. I know it looks daunting here, but just remember that all we're doing here is running a script. Now, you might ask the question, why? Why are all these settings here for just running a script? Well, it turns out that there might be a series of conditions you want to have when you're running this step. So I may want to only have this target certain environments. For example, I can specify which environments I want this step to run on. I may want it to run on any environment. I may want to also put conditions around this. So I may want this step to only run in certain conditions, like where the variable has been qualified, or if the previous step actually succeeded. I can also specify things like retries. Now you may wonder, like, why would I want to retry a script step? Well, a retry is used in a context of something that can go wrong, like a network connection. So latency outside the, as much as we try and help our users, we cannot sometimes help in possible situations like network latency and network connections. So retries are a feature we've added recently to Octopus that allows you to basically try or attempt to the step again so that your deployment processes don't fail. So inside here, we're running a script step, and we give it a name. We can specify the script itself. We can specify the script source itself. So these are all these knobs and buttons I was mentioning earlier. You can specify where that script comes from. So you can say, it's actually coming from a Git repo over there, or I'm going to utilize this package that I have uploaded to Octopus over here. It really doesn't matter. So inside here, this is where basically you write the script. So out of the box, this step actually has support for 5 different scripting languages. We also have the notion of what are called variables. So when you write these scripts, one of the challenges you'll find is obviously how you write these things can vary depending upon the type of environment, the type of scenario that's up here in this case. So these and other scenarios come up a lot in terms of environments. And so we provide variable support out of the box for you to utilize in the context of a script step. And so that's really great here. You can actually utilize this in a lot of different ways and utilize these variables because they do change depending upon the type of environment that you're targeting. So this turns out to be a really powerful feature. So these and other sorts of steps that I can use. So let's go ahead and just write a simple, write output, and then I can say hello Octopus, for example. I do have to specify some features here. And in fact, if I don't specify all the features and I try and click save, we'll validate it. And if there's a missing feature here, we'll specify that you have to we validate the step configuration. We tell you, hey, you're missing a target tag here. A target tag here is basically a way in which we can describe where we're deploying to in this case, or what we're targeting to. And these turned out to be really useful in the context of deployments. So we mandate that you have a target tag here. So here, we can assign deployment targets to this. It's not really contextual in this manner, but we can define this as part of a series of deployment targets that you can specify here. And I can add a deployment target if I wish. Out of the box, we support a variety of deployment targets. So for example, I can say I want to deploy to Kubernetes, or I want to deploy to Linux, or Windows, or Mac, or Azure, or you get the idea, or AWS, or a cloud region, or I can actually use it to an offline package drop, for example. There's lots and lots of different ways I can actually do this. I'll just say specify a cloud region here. And a cloud region is something that we provide for you to deploy to if you wish. And I can give it a variety of target tags, etc. I can also specify a worker tool, and we do validation for this as well. So if I want to specify a target tag, I can specify those as well. So I'll say hello Octopus is my target tag as well. So these are other settings I can set up. We actually run a series of connectivity checks as well. So if you're connecting to a Kubernetes cluster or an IaaS machine or a Tomcat bill, these and other configuration checks you can track as part of the deployment process itself, and you can set those up accordingly. Now, coming back to my deployment process here, the next thing I want to do is I've set up my environments, I've set up my script. The next thing I may want to do is create a release. Now, a release is not what you think. I know that we use the term release a lot in the context of software development, as this is the way in which that's something that's going out, and in a sense it is. But in the context of Octopus Deploy, a release is a versioned series of project settings and a deployment that you can use here. And you can also use things like semver here to define your version number. I'll set these variables accordingly. And a release is really a snapshot of everything that's gone into defining a deployment. And the reason why this is important is because you want your deployments to be consistent. If you don't snapshot these values into a release itself, it's going to be very hard for you to migrate or roll back those releases across environments, or roll back if you're employing a rollback pattern, for example. And so releases turn out to be immensely powerful because they're static in nature, they're a snapshot, and they are representing a state in time. The reason why you want to do it this way is because obviously that provides you with that context. All right. From there, I can then say, yep, I'm ready to deploy. Let's go ahead and set up those parameters. Here I can specify what environments I want to deploy to. I can specify when I want to do my deployment, either now or later. I can specify a priority. This is an early access feature we've added recently. And what this allows you to do is give a weighted priority to these, because you may have Octopus as the central focal point for all your deployments. And you've got a lot of deployments going out. You may want to give this a priority so that you can actually elevate the status of its deployment. Let's say it's a hot fix, etc. There's lots of features you can add there. There's another thing that you can do here, which is exclude any steps that you have as part of your deployment process. Now, my deployment process here is pretty simple. I've got one step. But if I had a series of steps, like let's say I had 30 or 40 steps, which is not unusual, by the way. When we talk to customers, I've seen deployment processes that are literally like tens or hundreds of steps. These things can get really complicated. And sometimes what you want to do is you want to just click on a step and say, look, this one I don't want to run. You have the option of specifying that as part of a deployment. I can also specify a failure mode. So guided failure mode allows you to specify if an error occurs during your deployment, let me go ahead and pause the deployment, allow me to correct the behavior of the deployment as it's gone on. And so I can enable that as a default, which is for the target environment, or I can say, yep, just turn it off, or use it altogether. So you can see here we've gone ahead and set this up, and we're ready to deploy, and we can go ahead and execute this deployment. Now, when we do this deployment, we get a full trace log of everything that's happening here. So we get a task summary of the task itself. We get a log of showing us everything. We can enable verbose or verbose, depending on how you pronounce it, logging. I get a change log, or a history run tally of everything that's gone on. I can see all the changes that have occurred. And if I have any commits that I've integrated as part of this, those will show up as part of my build information. Now, build information is really powerful because you can create your release notes from this. That's something I haven't set up yet, but it is something you can set up if you so wish. So these and other settings I can certainly fire up. And we can utilize them in the context of here. I'll just go ahead and cancel this one because obviously there's a lot of setup here. But essentially, that's how a deployment is run and set up from scratch. Ian's got a little comment here. It's been a few years since I last used Octopus Deploy. I love the improvements. You guys have been busy. Yeah, we have. We've been really busy building out new features. So welcome back. It's great to have you back. And yeah, so we've been really busy building out these things. If you're at all curious of some of the things that we've also been building, you can go to this resource here, which is roadmap.octopus.com. There you'll find a page that looks like this. If you're at all curious as some of the things that we're thinking about in terms of features, things that are under consideration, things that are planned, we list them here. And we can also get a running log of everything that we've been running. So Ian, you were curious about, like, you guys have been busy. Yeah, like this is all the stuff that we've shipped just in the last few months. We've been really, really busy. If you've got an idea for a feature that you would like to see, you can also submit your own. You can also tell us how important that feature is. So feel free to take advantage of it. That's at roadmap.octopus.com. And definitely a resource worth checking out. Awesome. All right. So getting back to my environment here, you can see I've done a deployment. I just canceled it because, whatever. But, there's lots of ways in which you can set this up. Now, there are a bunch of other settings as well that I can show you. We don't have a lot of time to show you everything. I'm already 28 minutes into this live stream, and we're gunning but I want to jump to the other slides that I have here just to kind of show you some context. So what you saw was the ability to create these things basically from scratch, and create a deployment process that you can use in concert with others. So as I said, you're going to use this tool basically as a means for doing deployments, and a lot of teams are going to use this tool. So we provide you a visual representation of your deployment process, including all the conditions and child steps that occur. We also give you integrated rundown, markdown notes for every step if you want to integrate those. The reason why is because as you're operating as a team, you want to make sure that you can see those things. We also give you the ability to execute steps in parallel. You can actually have them based in conditions so that you can execute those. And we also show you what environments certain steps will run on. So there are going to be cases where you're going to define a deployment process, but you only want certain environments to run certain steps. And that's usually in the case of doing something very specific, like I want to do a review of something before things continue. Now, just getting into some of the why capabilities, out of the box, we provide the ability to implement patterns as part of your deployments. We give you a consistent and reliable means of doing deployments. That's the main reason why you'll use a tool like Octopus. You define these deployment processes. You integrate this with your environments and machines and targets. You have built-in rollback support, being able to turn these failed deployments back. You can deploy on Friday, despite all the contrary memes out there, and there's lots of things to it. Another feature we have built in, which I haven't shown you, is a feature called runbooks. So oftentimes when doing work on infrastructure, or you're doing deployments to targets, for example, you want to do other operations as well. You want to be able to do your sort of DevOps automation tasks, things like clean up databases, apply service patches, clean up logs, etc. These and other types of operational tasks you can do in the form of what we call a runbook. And you can author these things just as easily as you can with the deployment process. We give you a whole collection of steps that you can use. In addition to that, we also have integration with a variety of other scenarios as well, particularly Kubernetes, for example. So integrating with Kubernetes, we have built-in support for Helm. We have built-in support for YAML, doing a description there. And then we have a feature that you often see a lot of folks use when they become more mature in their usage of Octopus, which is a feature called tenants. Multi-tenancy or tenant-based deployments is a really powerful capability that allows you to essentially give you different versions of an app, and not in the numerical sense, but a different type of application that you can define for different types of users. More often than not, we think of those users as being geographically disparate from each other. So these are folks who are in different locations, but it could be different types of users. It could be, whatever your application requires. You can set these up as tenants, and then you can deploy those utilizing capabilities for multi-tenancy built out of the box. And then finally, and this is something you don't get with deployment scripts, we actually track everything. We give you an audit log. We integrate with a variety of other solutions as well. And then we give you all of that governance, risk, and compliance check as part of that solution. So this is allowing you to ask the question, who did what, when, and why in the terms of your deployments, which from a compliance perspective is really good. All right, let's jump into another demo here. I'll just quickly check to see if there are any other questions. No, there are not. That's fine. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Happy to answer them. So, jumping back into our solution here, I'm going to jump over here into an example that shows you tenants. So we can define our tenants here, and you can see we have a variety of different tenant types. Just get my face out of the way here. Sorry. So we have a variety of different tenant types. So these can be tenants for the fictitious example here is a veterinary clinic or a car rental location or a pet shop, for example. So I can define these tenants, and the tenant can encompass not only a tag for describing those things, a project, but also the environments. And once you define these tenants, you incorporate them as part of your deployment processes. You can then deploy to them very easily. We can also specify our infrastructure here. So we give this view here of our environments. There are concepts here I haven't described yet. There's things like worker pools, which we'll talk about. But you get an at a glance or snapshot of everything that goes on in the context of this. I can take a look at any deployment targets that I want to set up as well. I showed you that earlier. I can take a look at my environments, and there's a whole bunch of other things I can take a look at as well. Jumping back to my deployments here, we have the ability of taking a look at where these solutions are being deployed to. If I take a look at some examples here, so here's a case of Octopus Shop, which is just a fictitious app here. You can see we have a deployment process that looks a little bit more elaborate. So here we're integrating with solutions like Slack. So we're sending a message to Slack, letting folks know, hey, we're doing a deployment. We're running a script step. We're then doing a feature here called manual intervention. So manual intervention is where I basically grab a human by the collar and I say, hey, get over here and approve this step. So you can actually pause the execution of a deployment through what's called a manual intervention. A manual intervention is basically a step that says, hey, pause everything, wait for someone to come along and click continue or stop for this. And you can ping certain folks. You set these groups up accordingly, which is great. So jumping back to our deployment process here, we can do things like health checks. We can deploy to Azure. We're doing other Slack notifications as well. And notice here, we can actually send different types of messages based on the execution. So I mentioned earlier, we have different types of contexts in terms of steps themselves. So in the context of a successful deployment, we're going to run this step in the condition where the previous step succeeded. In the case of a failure, this is an example where we want to send different types of messages. We'll only set a Slack message if the previous step failed. So this is giving an example of how that looks. So coming back to our project here, you can see these are our projects here, and we have a variety of deployment processes associated with this, which is great. We're setting this all up, and we're able to utilize this in concert with a variety of other solutions, which I'd like to show you now. So jumping back into GitHub itself, I mentioned earlier the fact that we actually have integration with GitHub, and just wanted to show this to you. If you actually jump into the GitHub Marketplace, you'll notice that we have a wide variety of solutions here. So we have integration with GitHub Apps. We have integration with GitHub Actions. We also have our extension for GitHub Copilot as well. These and other sort of solutions you can use in the context of your deployments, and in the context of Octopus Deploy, allows you to do a wide variety of operations. So I can do things like I showed before, create releases. So here's an example of the create release action. And you use this in the context of your workflows. Excuse me. So your workflows, which you'll define in YAML, will allow you to incorporate these into your steps, and this is how the actions work. I'll show you an example of this in just a sec. But these and other types of actions and integration points we have with solutions like GitHub. There are other ones as well. TeamCity is another example. There's a lot of different ways you can actually integrate here as part of this solution. So I'm just going to find an example here that we can use to showcase what this looks like. So I have an example here. So this is a sort of, it doesn't really matter what's being shown here. This is just a typical sort of repo we have served up on GitHub. And you'll notice that here we have our workflows folder. This is where you run your GitHub actions. We have YAML for describing these things. And just to show you how we actually kick off a deployment from a CI, a continuous integration server or process. So we're doing our build, we're doing our tests, et cetera, et cetera. All this sort of should look familiar. And you can use basically pretty much any environment you want here. Down here at the bottom, this is where we actually utilize our GitHub Actions. So this is where I actually go ahead, where I'm going ahead and doing integration with Octopus. So here I'm pushing up packages. So Octopus itself actually has the ability of containing project packages. So you can specify these things. We have a package repo that you can utilize here as in the context of Octopus itself. A lot of these things are listed here. So if we jump into our built-in package repository, we can integrate with other package repositories. We have these exposed as feeds, but these are the packages. These are the binaries that you will upload to Octopus to use in a concert with a deployment process. The reason why I mention this here is because this is a step or an action that we're executing to upload the binaries that we generate from a build process that occurs above to Octopus. And then from there, we can key off or kick off a release and deployment for this build. So in a sense, you can have very good integration between GitHub Actions and Octopus. You can also integrate this scenario with a GitHub app. So we have a GitHub app that you can automatically connect to and do all these things. But GitHub Actions is a very canonical. If you talk to anyone who's done anything with GitHub Actions, this is a very typical sort of scenario. You define a lot of YAML, and then you integrate out as part of this environment. And so this is showing an example of how this integrates with GitHub. And again, that's exposed through the marketplace itself. All right, just want to be sensitive to time here. So I'm just going to show you some resources here. We've jumped all over the place. I know there's a lot to take in, but yeah, there's a lot to Octopus. It provides a really, really good scenario-driven solution for doing continuous delivery and continuous deployment. So something you should definitely check out. So hopefully, you've learned all these concepts in this webinar, how Octopus works and why you should use it. The fundamental concepts we talk about, things like projects, deployment processes, steps, releases, etc. I showed you how to create a deployment process, and I just showed you how you would trigger that deployment through a CI process in the case of GitHub Actions. So with that, just like to thank you for your time. I'm going to just jump and show you some more resources here. And in the meantime, I'll keep an eye on the comment pane for any questions that may come up. So again, I mentioned the GitHub Marketplace here. We also have a series of other webinars. If you're all interested, you can check these out over at octopus.com/webinars. We've got some really great ones coming up. So the one that you're attending to right now is this one, but we've got some ones coming up. We have this really good one with Adam and Graham. Graham is from HashiCorp, and they're going to talk about how you do secure continuous delivery at scale with Octopus Deploy and a solution called HashiCorp Vault. HashiCorp Vault is a solution for credential management. So if you want to have secure access to credentials and integrate them or utilize them in the context of a deployment pipeline, you can integrate directly with HashiCorp Vault. It actually integrates directly with that. Something I should mention, if I jump back here to my deployment processes, I neglected to mention this, but oftentimes you'll add steps here and you'll look at the built-in ones that we have, and you might think, actually, there's the step that I need isn't there. We have a whole series of community steps that you can use. I neglected to show these, but we have a ton of steps, well over 500 steps that have been built by the community that you could use in the context of your deployment process. And so if there's something that we haven't built out of the box, chances are the community has. And the reason why I mention this is because you'll find integration with other solutions here, including HashiCorp Vault, as part of these solutions going forward. And so in terms of the webinar that's coming up for this, I think it's this Tuesday, yes, you can take a look at that, and they'll talk a lot about this. So go to octopus.com/webinars to find out more. We've also got a recap of KubeCon that's coming up, and we've got this one, which is really exciting. We got Nathan Harvey of Google joining us to talk about the latest and greatest State of DevOps report. So the State of DevOps report for 2024 has been released and is now available, and Nathan is going to join us to talk about it. So these and other webinars you'll find up on our webinars page, which is great. Let's see here. We got a question here from Ian. Do you have a PowerShell module and or IDE integrations? Yes. So there's a lot. We have an integration here with Visual Studio Code. So if you go to let's see here, Visual Studio Code. I think it's the marketplace itself. I'm trying to remember. Oh, extensions. Excuse me. It's at marketplace.visualstudio.com. And if you search for Octopus, for example, Eh, sorry. There's no J in Octopus, much as I want there to be. You'll see there's our extension there. And if you install this, you'll get the ability to do, you can take a look at OCL, which is the Octopus configuration language that you use to describe. I mentioned config as code earlier. When you persist your projects to Git, this is what it looks like. And so you can actually traverse that tree structure here in the context of Octopus Deploy. And you can do this inside of VS Code. There is also the GitHub Copilot extension. So if I take a look at Copilot here, this was part of the launch that we had for, this is part of what GitHub had for its launch. So you can actually integrate with Octopus directly through GitHub Copilot running inside the context, in this case, of VS Code. And so you can ask basically Octopus questions like, hey, what are the status of my deployments? Or go ahead and, summarize the deployment logs for a particular project. These and other things you can do as part of that. And we do have integration with PowerShell. There's lots and lots of stuff that you can take advantage of there. Ian's got all the questions here. What is a license for community steps? Can we take them and modify them to meet our exact needs? Yes. The license that's associated with that, I think, is just, they're just there. They're public. They're part of our GitHub repo. So they're open source. You could take advantage of them. And you can certainly create your own if you want. They're not very hard to create at all. There's a description file that we have, and then you can execute them in the context like PowerShell or something like that. You can author them in different ways, but the canonical way that people author them is a description file and a script file, and that's it. So very easy to author there. There's a question here from Sahith. So does this give the suggestions for build failures in CI/CD? I assume you're talking about the GitHub Copilot extension. No, not build failures, no. But after the build has completed and you've got packages and stuff integrated within Octopus itself, you can ask questions of Octopus. So if I take a look, not that. If I take a look at the, see if I can, there you go. So in the context of Octopus, this is after you've set Octopus up and you've got a series of deployments already set up, and you can start asking Octopus questions from inside the context of VS Code and say, what is the status of my deployments, for example? But this won't show you build failures. That is a CI process. We don't do builds. That's something that GitHub or TeamCity or BuildKite will do. That's a CI process. We do deployments. That's what we focus on. Great question, though. Awesome. Just jumping back to some other resources, we actually have an event coming up called Shipped. You'll find this at octopus.com/shipped. This is in 12 days. This will feature well over 28 sessions. We've got speakers from all around the world, including folks from Octopus, from CodeFresh, and others, talking about a whole range of subjects. The 2-day virtual event I'll be hosting, so my voice is going to definitely be gone by the end of it. But we've got a full schedule, of sessions that you can check out. If you're at all curious, you can check it out at /schedule. We've got our opening keynote with Paul and Colin, and then we've got a whole series of sessions for day 1. We talk a lot about Octopus Deploy, etc. For day 2, we talk a lot about GitOps. We talk about DevOps. We talk about Kubernetes. We talk about Argo. Lots and lots of stuff happening for day 2. If you want to find out more, you can go to octopus.com/shipped. Definitely register. Please, please, please register. We'd love to see you there. It's a free event. You can join, and we'll be broadcasting across all our socials. Something also I should mention, and I neglected to mention, it's early for me, so I forgot, is that we also have our YouTube channel. The recording of this webinar will be made available here. You can actually see it's live here. This is occurring right now. If I refresh this, you'll see it's live right now. There you go. There's live. But we have a whole bunch of videos that we publish here as part of our channel. We publish at least 2 or 3 times a week. We do videos on all kinds of things. We have a show called Deploy on Friday, where we talk about the latest news associated with Octopus and CodeFresh, etc. So make sure to check that out. We also do videos on what's latest and greatest. We talk about all kinds of things around Kubernetes deployments. So check that out. That's at youtube.com/Octopus Deploy. Great stuff. All right. Well, that concludes the Octopus 101 for November 2024. Thank you for your time and attention. We really appreciate it. Thanks, Ian. Really appreciate all the questions. That's great to see. If you want, you can attend our next one. We will be publishing it shortly. We do these, I think Yeah, we do it the first Thursday of every month, and we'll be hosting one next month in December, along with all the other months coming up. Don't forget about octopus.com/webinars. That's where all your webinars will be. But until next time, I don't see any other questions. Until next time, happy deployments, everyone. Download a trial, check it out, kick the tires for yourself. Really appreciate it. Take care, everyone.